Hey guys, thanks so much for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Shemane, and today's show is all about the Enneagram. If you've never heard about it, stay tuned because it's going to change your life. I know it's changed mine. My guest is Clare Loughrige. She's a pastor, an author, and an Enneagram instructor. And she's going to talk all about the basics of the Enneagram. In fact, we talk so much that we are cutting this up into several parts. So make sure you subscribe so you'll be the first to know when we post another video, another interview, because I'm telling you guys, it's going to change your life. And I want to give, before we get into the interview with Clare, I want to give a special shout out to one of my viewers here, Smilin' Doug. Thanks so much, Smilin' Doug, for the kind words. I really do appreciate that. I hope you have an amazing day. All right, guys, let's get on with the show. Welcome, everybody. With me today is Clare Loughrige. Did I say it right?
Very nice.
And how do you say it if I was in
Ireland?
Ireland.
Loughrige.
Okay, well, you do that rolling of the R because I don't do it very well. And I already found out that you are a spiritual director. But why don't you tell our audience a little bit about you and your history, and what I'd like to do, if this is okay with you, Clare, is do like a 3-part series. We'll talk a little bit about you and how you got into the Enneagram and became a spiritual director. We can talk a little bit about the different types of Enneagram, the typing, and then the spiritual rhythms for the Enneagram personality style, and motions of the soul, all of your books, and we're going to get into all of that. So is that good with you if we do like a 3-part thing?
That sounds great.
Okay, there's so much to talk about. I'm so excited, but tell us a little bit about you, your history, and why you decided to get involved in the Enneagram.
Yeah. Well, most good things come out of difficult things, as you well know, right? And so the awakening for me happened at 40 years old.
So you're 41 now.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. 57.
Seriously, we're the same age.
Are we really?
Yes.
Wow. I'm going to have you help me with some of my mojo.
You look great. You have great mojo and great energy, and I think that's why I was going to say got attracted to each other, but you know what I mean.
I do, yeah.
Okay, go ahead before I interrupt you, but I want to hear all about you and tell our audience about how we connected as well. But let's go back and take a deep dive into all things Clare.
Okay, all things Clare. So I'm the youngest of 6 kids, born into a family, my dad, Italian, and Italians don't typically say what the other part of their life is because they get really excited about their Italianness, right? And Sicilian, for that matter. So I was raised in a really awesome family, 6 kids. We had lots of singing, laughing, playing in our family. Not that difficult things didn't happen, but we always recovered through song and food and wine. It was the way of the family. And at 18 years old, I was awakened to the possibility to have a personal relationship with God, which I always went to church as a kid. So this idea of maybe being connected in a different way occurred.
Can I ask how that happened? And was it somebody else or was it you on your own?
Yeah, so I went to Catholic school as a child and then started dating a young man that I fell in love with senior year of high school, who I'm still married to 38 years later. And he and his family were a part of the Catholic charismatic movement in the Detroit area in the late 70s. And so he just was getting awakened to what we would call Catholic faith alive, just music and energy and, less about the liturgy and more about a living experience with God. And so that was really the beginning, just the Catholic charismatic movement, and loved that. But we found out that we couldn't be married and go into ministry if we were Catholic because they didn't have married priests. And so we went to an Assembly of God Bible College And then we studied with Methodists and Quakers, and we're really, I've said this before, we are like an ecumenical potpourri. So we have lots of faith tradition that has given us a way to experience God and not just know God cognitively. So having said all that, we're both super charged kind of people. We planted a church at 28 years old after doing an internship at a church in the Detroit area for several years. And when I turned 40, about 12 years into the church plant, 10 years into the church plant, something like that, I was diagnosed with MS and found out that the way I was living my life was hurting my life, and then discovered I was also probably hurting other people too, which was a hard...
How so?
Yeah.
Why do you say hurting other people?
Well, when you're driven and you're always on to the next thing, you're always thinking about what do we need to do next, what's the next goal, when do we accomplish that, and you're moving at breakneck speed, and you're not recognizing that you're leaving people in your
dust trail.
and so
I only laugh because I can so relate. That's me. Like I can't sit still. I'm all over the board, and I'm going. Are you coming? Are you coming with me? And usually most people can't keep up.
Well, there is definitely a capacity for energy, and there's a bandwidth in particular personality styles that may look a lot like we can do more, but we just do it at a different speed, kind of like the tortoise and the hare thing.
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize was that put me in a place where I was crashing and burning. I had diplopia, I had, double vision, I had numb limbs, and then found out that I had lesions on my brain and my spine. And the spinal tap then confirmed what was in the fluid was consistent with multiple sclerosis.
And so how did you cure that? Because you're cured now. I mean, you look amazing. Are you still struggling with it?
No, I am not. So I ended up in a retreat in a Franciscan monastery with a spiritual director and retreat guide named Ruth Haley Barton. She gave the first spiritual practice and told everybody to go to bed. Said the best thing you could do for your soul is to take a nap. And so get into bed, put your head on the pillow, pull the covers up, and experience the warmth of God as you're resting and not doing anything for God. And that was crazy, because I had been working for God for a lot of years, and this idea of not having to do anything and to rest was just a pretty new idea. And I know that sounds really ridiculous to some people, but for me, that resting was a brand new spiritual practice. And
so for what period of time were you supposed to rest?
So we went into what was called the Great Silence, no speaking in the evening until the morning, when we opened up our mouths and in song and prayer, and then went back into silence. You had another practice you could experience. How do you listen to God in sacred text? Instead of reading for information, how do you read for transformation? How do you listen for words of love to reach out to you, rather than here's how I prove my point, here's how I make my way, here's what my next step is. It was more, how am I listening to the voice of love that is inviting me to either work or rest, either to use words or to remain silent. So that was a new way of living. And that went on. I was with a 2-year community 2 years in a row. So at the end of that second 2-year community, I had another MRI that said my prognosis was good. I was not having any more symptoms. But fast forward to 13 years later, and they said there were no lesions on my brain or my spine. And I've never stopped. I've never stopped those rhythms of silence and word, rest and work.
Wow, such great information. Thank you so much, Claire, and thank you to all of you who are watching. I'd be honored if you left a comment and let me know how this helped you, and if you're interested in any other types of videos, fitness, nutrition, mindset, motivation, whatever, let me know. Thanks so much for joining me today. I'll see you next time.